Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Gwiglet, the channel that goes through books, beards, and beyond. Today, we will be continuing our series on exam success and understanding Macbeth the play by William Shakespeare. Today's focus is on the character of Lady Macbeth, following our series on themes and characters so we can continue exploring the play itself. Now, as we explore the play, what can you do with this lesson? As I've said before, there are a number of different skills you can apply to this text. First one is to make sure you take notes of what exactly it is you have been watching. Notes are a really important way to strengthen your knowledge, strengthen your understanding, and strengthen your overall performance on a text such as Macbeth, so I strongly encourage that. On top of this, you can use a number of the quotes today to build mind maps, to develop your understanding in a more visual sense. As well as this can be used as a really handy revision tool. You can watch this back by yourself or with your classmates. You can share and discuss ideas that you may gain from today's video. As well as this, you want to make sure you can use this as a means of annotating a copy of the text. I will not only be providing you with a number of really important quotes, but also points within the quotes that I feel are worth mentioning. So it's really useful to watch this and annotate your copy at the same time. And on top of this, we can also list a range of examples from the play that will help you further enhance your understanding and appreciation of one of the most popular plays from the bard himself. Now, a good way of starting this lesson, I thought, was to look at the name Lady Macbeth itself. Now, what values come out from this? What important ideas come from her name and her name alone? There's quite a few actually, and I'd like to just point them out right now. Let's start with the first part of the name, Lady. Now, there's two things here that come important points. The idea of lady is a title, as in Lord and Lady Capulet, to name some characters from Shakespeare's other plays. But there's also this idea of a role. Now, to be a lady, to have the qualities and virtues of a lady. So there's two kind of aspects that come with such a title. As well as this, we think of Macbeth. She is the wife to Macbeth. By that rationale and reasoning alone, she is, in effect, almost like his property. His name is her name. And her identity is tied to his indelibly. So we start the play with a character whose entire identity is shaped by her husband. This becomes really important at the start, and in particular how the characters develop as the play continues. So let's look at Lady Macbeth at the beginning of the play, in Acts 1 and 2. She starts the play reading her own husband's letter. Now there's another layer that comes to what I just mentioned. She's reading her own husband's letter, so her words aren't her own. Her name is derived from her husband. Everything about her stems directly from her husband, and it's really telling to the audience how her whole identity is shaped by him, and really revealing of the lack of power she arguably has. We see how she gains confidence and a sense of identity from reading the words of Macbeth's letter. She openly says how the raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Notice that pronoun there, my, in Act 1, Scene 5. My battlements, as if she owns Dunsinane, an idea that would have been beyond the pale in the 17th century. She feels that she is the one in charge here. She will be the one to create the plot that will end Duncan's life. On top of this, we see her as a cunning and manipulative character in the beginning. We see how she says in Act 1, Scene 5, "Thou wouldst be great, Macbeth wouldst be great, art not without ambition, without the illness should attend it." She says how she can openly see the qualities and virtues in Macbeth and how he is a great man, that he's not without ambition, but he doesn't have the illness, the amorality, the lack of ethics and virtues that he needs to become the king. As well as this, she begins to channel unchristian spirits to give her the strength to go ahead with regicide. You'll recall this quote from one of my previous videos. "Come you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here." Notice this command of "come you spirits," like she's in enchanting these unchristian elements and spirits to shed not only her femininity but her humanity in the "unsex me here" aspect of that quote. Really quite important and really telling particularly to an audience both then and now. To follow on from this, we see how she is not afraid of challenging Macbeth. In Act 1, Scene 7, she's quoted as saying, "When you durst do it," i.e. the murder of Duncan, "then you were a man." This idea of manliness, a man, that he has to murder someone in order to reinforce his manly qualities and virtues. Really, again, quite telling in the overall scheme of Macbeth's manipulation and coercion by his wife. Now, as we continue the play, looking in Acts 1 and 2, we see how Lady Macbeth gains even more confidence as the murder of Duncan is unfolding. We see how she says, "That which hath made them drunk hath made me bold. What hath quenched them hath given me fire." Notice the contrast between drunk and bold, quenched and fire. She feels more alive than she ever has. She feels a sense of identity she hasn't felt in a long time. She feels a sense of belonging she hasn't felt in a long time. She feels part of something great and grand that will not only propel Macbeth, but propel herself. She also, in private, very revealingly shows a sense of conscience still, and a little human weakness here, actually. She mentions how, had he, Duncan, not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it. That Duncan almost has a human quality to him, and that Duncan she could almost stop the actions because of how he resembled her dad, her own father. And it was that stopped her from committing the murder herself. She then mocks Macbeth, however, for showing almost the same weaknesses. Macbeth is traumatized, Macbeth feels a genuine sense of fear in what's going on, and in doing so, she doesn't respond by helping or reassuring. She instead decides to do something quite different and decides to mock him. She says how, "My hands are of your colour, but I shame to wear a heart so white." Notice this, she's saying these different pronouns. My hands are of your colour, I shame to wear a heart so white. As if what he's doing is cowardice. As if he is only someone who would be a coward for doing such a thing. Notice that action of the word white there. How she has no sympathy for him when he admits his own fears. However, she is able to act naturally when the murder of Duncan is revealed. Notice the way she faints, or I put in inverted commas there quite deliberately, how she faints or pretends to faint as a result. And it's very telling in Act 2, Scene 3, how she falls into the plot very simply and how everyone believes her, and she subsequently fools the rest of the characters. Now, in the middle of the play, Lady Macbeth's personality and characteristics slightly change. We see that she is anxious in herself, but she keeps quiet to reassure her husband at very separate times, either when he's conflicted in Act 3, Scene 2, or traumatized later on at the banquet scene when he sees the ghost of Macbeth. For instance, she says, "Naught's had, all's spent, where our desire is got without content." All is spent. She feels that everything is at a loss. And Macbeth feels that as well, but she doesn't share it with him. That's almost a tragedy. They don't share their fears with each other. They only share their glories to an extent. However, when he says his own fears, she says, "What's done is done." Notice how simple that language is, even now. Very simple to understand. What's done is done. There's no discussion. There's nothing to be done about this. And when he begins to see the ghost of Banquo in Act 3, Scene 4, she says, "When all's done, you look but on a stool." You, only him, the pronoun you there, but also he's just looking at a chair. She's trying to show him that what he's doing is so far from reality, and trying to persuade him that his fears are nothing more than fears themselves. She then begins to resort to mocking him once the banquet falls apart. She says that he is quite unmanned in folly. Notice that verb unmanned, playing on those ideas of masculinity again with Macbeth. But she also says how you have broke the good meeting with most admired disorder. Notice the pronoun there, you have. No one else but him. She blames him. She pins the faults of the banquet onto him and him alone, and does not show any consolation or empathy to him whatsoever. As we get towards the end of the play, however, in Act 5, we see a very different side to Lady Macbeth once we see the downfall begin to take place. We see her fall apart mentally. She's hallucinating about her fears of everything she's helped to commit, as well as her death and the fate of her own soul and how feels condemned to hell. A chambermaid is quoted as saying, "She, Lady Macbeth, has light by her continually. 'Tis her command." Notice the verb there, adverb, continually. Like she will not have a light without her. She's afraid of the dark. The dark is a metaphor for death and hell that comes with it. Think of those consequences that come there. 'Tis her command. 'Tis what she commands to do. Out, damned spot, out, I say. Notice this sense here in what she's saying, the damned spot. Damn with connotations of hell. Damned spot, this spot of blood she can't wash off. Very contrasting to how she talks to Macbeth in Act 2, where she says, "A little water clears us of this deed," which is very dismissive. Here, "Out, damned spot, out, I say." This idea of trying to constantly wash her hands of blood and the fears that come with it. She then, in her final line, says, "What's done cannot be undone. To bed, to bed, to bed." This word there, cannot, as if there's a constant sense of doom, cannot be undone. But this repetition of to bed is not only a sense of sleep, clearing her mind, but hell as well, and death that comes with it. Sleep, like the big sleep, the eternal sleep, and that's the fear she feels here. To bed, to bed, to bed. She feels she has to almost end her life in order to achieve some sense of peace. And then the final quote that refers to her in the play implies that she has indeed taken her own life, and she, as a consequence, remember the contextual feelings on religion and one's soul, would be damned for it. Malcolm says how his, Macbeth's, fiend-like queen, who, as 'tis thought, by self and violent hand took off her life. Notice how she's a fiend-like queen, someone who's evil and devilish in what she's done, but through self and violent hands. There's the implication there of suicide, that she's taken her own life, and there's the values that come with that society at the time would have felt, particularly on one's soul. So that concludes our lesson on Lady Macbeth today. Thank you as always for watching. I really appreciate it, and I cannot say how much I'm very grateful for the growing number of subscribers I've gained, as well as the views. Please give a thumbs up. Please share this with your friends. Please follow on Twitter at LitGwig. That's LitGwig. Please remember that. And until next time, keep watching. All the very best, and take care.